So how much time will we have?
Well, Maghrib is at 6:20, so that gives you about 30 minutes. Or I wonder if some people are coming.
Yeah, like it's your call, whatever. Like we can be flexible. Because if like more people will show up, then you know.
Assalamualaikum. Are you here for this event? Yeah. Awesome. What time? What are you thinking about either starting now or?
Oh, that's nice. Because maybe people will stay after Jama, you know?
After Maghrib?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe starting it after Maghrib? Is that what you're saying?
Well, she carpooled with us, Amanda.
Oh, you're saying she needs to be.
I don't know. Amanda, if we started after Maghrib, is that going to be too late for you to get home? Because I don't want to keep you. You sure?
Let's see.
So Maghrib's like they're going to call the adhan, I think it's 6, or the iqama's at 6:20. So then we just like pray and then we can start the talk after. And then there's not really as much of it. Well, it's still short between Isha too. That's another thing.
How long's the talk?
Nah, I mean, I can make it anywhere between like 30 minutes or like an hour.
You can't start after.
Oh no?
There is a time, and there are people that came for that time.
Well, I'm asking Haneen.
No.
Okay.
It's not even her call. People came for that time, you have to talk to them at that time.
Up to you. I'm flexible either way. I'm flexible either way.
Okay. Well, let's start then.
Okay.
I can make it short.
Let's say Q&A after, show more videos after, whatever.
Or if you want to extend longer after, up to you. I'm willing to stay longer. This is good for me.
Okay.
I personally prefer after Maghrib, but whatever works.
Yeah.
For everyone.
Well, I don't know. There was already like people on, you know, so.
Yeah.
Well, we could just, yeah. You have so much going on that you have to maneuver. Are we live?
We're live now.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Well, welcome everybody. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. So good to see so many women here present today in the audience. Salams to everybody who's joining the live stream. We started a bit early, but I think we're ready to go now. So I'm really happy to be here at Yassine. I didn't know that I actually came here not too long ago, a couple weeks ago actually, to pray because I was dropping somebody off at the airport. And I realized that we had come to pray Asr here, and I was so emotional when I entered the building because this is just a very special space. Not knowing much about it, but just knowing that the work done being here, like all has to do with helping the youth and empowering them. So it's really nice to be here today. So I just want to start off by stating my intention for my talk today. I hope that whatever I share about my creative passions in storytelling and art resonate with you and your own passions and inspire you, and you can reflect on how you can use your talents as a means to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a little bit about me. I am from Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. I'm new to the Bay Area, so I just moved here in January. Alhamdulillah. I'm recently married. In fact, tomorrow's my 1-year anniversary with my husband, and we're expecting our first child in December, inshallah. I embraced Islam 2.5 years ago, and time really flies. I can't believe it's already been 2.5 years, but it's been a very beautiful journey, and I hope to share some of that with you in this talk today. I'm the only Muslim in my family. I'm a second-generation Mexican American, so that means my parents were born in Mexico, and I was born here in the United States and raised here. And a lot of my work as an artist and videographer really intersect my two identities. My culture as a Mexican American and also my identity as a Muslim. So just a brief history about my career. If you want to go to the first slide, inshallah. So my career began in local television as a multimedia journalist, which is just a big fancy title for being a news reporter. I was in charge of finding my own stories, cultivating them, finding my own sources, and presenting my story on camera, writing my own stories, and everything was enterprise from start to finish. So it was a lot of work, but I definitely learned a lot in that process and learned a lot about storytelling. And then I transitioned into the foster care and adoptive agency child welfare realm. So that's where I took my storytelling skills, and then eventually moved on to public education. And then as an artist, my medium is printmaking, and I've been a printmaker for about 7 years now. So in college, I studied broadcast communications. I went to the University of Texas at Arlington. My minor was in English, and ever since I was 9 years old, I wanted to be a news reporter. I knew that is what I wanted to be when I grew up, and alhamdulillah, eventually I did achieve that goal. And I would say that my parents really built that love of storytelling within me, because they would read to me a lot when I was a kid, and we loved watching movies together. So that's kind of how I fell in love with cinematography and the art of just putting together movies. And I would film and edit since I was 11 years old, but I'm glad I kept none of that work because it's pretty embarrassing looking back on it. But I ended up interning, working at the same news station that I interned at. So as soon as I graduated from college, I was working right away as a local news reporter for a local television news station, which was a CBS affiliate station. And then I moved on, like I said, as a storyteller onto the nonprofit and public education sectors. So as an artist, I just wanted to speak briefly about printmaking and the history of printmaking, because it can be a little confusing for some people. It's not the most popular medium. It's been around for a very long time. It began in the Han Dynasty, China. So it's a very old medium, but in recent history, what has made it popular is how useful of a tool it was during the civil rights movement, and definitely connecting it. I love connecting it with my culture as well, because with the Chicano movement, if anybody's familiar with that, Chicanos are Mexican Americans and I'm Mexican American, so that having that connection of being a printmaker to me is just really special. So there's just a short history that I wanted to share about that, and there's a really great article about Chicano history and printmaking, so I left the QR code up there for you guys. And I just wanted to share an example of a linocut print, and and then just reiterate that this particular medium really helped with informing people about social injustice, because it was such an easy way to print things using it this way. Before there were scanners, before there were printers, it's probably hard for us to imagine what that was like, but that's basically how people went about it and how they were able to share their art on a broader scale. So I just wanted to describe also the process of relief printmaking and show you a video. And I put together a little reel of printmaking, so I'll just kind of describe it to you and walk you through it and how printmaking works. Okay, so here, this is how I get the design onto the linoleum block. So as a printmaker, you can carve rubber, linoleum, or wood, and and I chose linoleum for this particular print. So this is like a soft material, and I carve it by hand using this V-gouge tool. And usually I try to take a few hours out of the day to over the course of a few days, because it can be very hard work on your shoulders, on your hands. I use oil-based ink most of the time to print, so that's what I was showing here. These are some of my tools. So there's a roller or a brayer, which is how the ink is rolled on to the linoleum block in order to transfer it onto the paper. So it'll show that here in a second. This is what the linoleum looks like up close. So it's very thin, and then rubber is just a little bit thicker. And if you think about, a stamp that you can get from Michael's or Hobby Lobby, that would be like an example of using rubber, in the printmaking form. I think it might have paused. Oh no, there we go. So here is some of, just an example of the ink that I was using, and I'm just mixing some of it. You might be able to fast forward actually, honey. And the roller, so I was mixing a couple colors together in order to create this ombre look for a print that I worked on that shows a piñata, which if you're Mexican or Latino, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Everybody had a piñata at their birthday party. You can fast forward it just a little bit too, because I think I have the printmaking process. So the relief printmaking process is that you would smooth a piece of paper after the block has been inked up, and after it takes a while to smooth it out, but essentially you're making an impression of that ink onto the paper. And this process can take up to 15 minutes per print or more, and you have to slowly and delicately peel the paper off of the block in order to reveal the print. So I get a lot of comments sometimes when I share my art in public, well, wouldn't it just be easier to use a printer? But this is the beauty of it, is that it's hand printed and each print comes out very unique, because not every single print is going to come out, as on a computer exactly the same way. They're going to have their own little bits that make each print unique with, how the ink transferred and the impression that it made. So this is particular print, I made a series of 8, I believe. So it's a very limited edition print. And it probably took me, I would say, 3 hours to just print 8 prints. Yeah. So moving on to the next slide, I just wanted to share briefly that I was inspired by my cousin to become a printmaker. These are a couple of her prints, her original designs. She used linoleum for these 2 particular pieces. And we used to exchange handwritten letters, and I would see that her letters would be decorated with stamps. And so I asked her where she bought the stamps, and she told me I didn't buy them, I actually made them. And that's how the conversation started about printmaking. So I learned on YouTube how to do this. I never went to art school or anything. And so yeah, after 3 years of practice, I decided to turn it into a business. And I carved custom stamps for local businesses, over 100 stamps for small and local businesses. And it's just an eco-conscious way of for them to be able to brand their business. So this is an example of one of the businesses that commissioned me. There is a small cafe in Cullum Institute in Dallas, and they have coffee cups which they stamp. So I created this stamp with their logo, and I just screenshotted an example of it. And I have a QR code up that has my website, so in case you want to learn more about that. And then I wanted to show you briefly how I go about carving stamps as well. So I think that's on the next slide. Yeah, if you want to play just the first video, so they're all silent. So this is how I go about carving the rubber. I trace the design. and the design goes onto the rubber, and that's how I transfer it on there. And depending on the detail of the logo, it could take me more or less time to carve it, but it definitely takes a lot of attention to detail. So this is an example of the stamp that I carved for my own small business, Salam Stamps. And then in the following video, I show how I go about upcycling, because it's really important for me to reuse materials and to recycle. I could buy the stamp blocks in bulk and mount the stamps that way, but I prefer to use older stamps that they no longer work, or the rubber doesn't function anymore, so I'll just upcycle older stamps for the new stamps. And I was just showing how exactly I did that. So this is how I will go about mounting the new logo stamp on, and then putting the new logo onto that block. So it can be kind of a tedious process, but it's definitely worth it. And I think a lot of my customers really value the sustainability factor in it. And then in the last video, it's just an example of how the stamp is used. So I just inked it up and then showed a sample on a piece of paper of how it worked. But most of my customers, they will either stamp their coffee cups of their cafe, they'll stamp their bags, their paper bags, thank you notes, packaging, all kinds of things, sometimes even t-shirts. So there's a lot of function that they have for stamps for their business. And we're kind of jumping back and forth a lot with like videography and art, but yeah, you can turn on the lights, thank you. So I wanted to share a little bit about the challenges that I faced as a young professional when it came to videography. So I had mentioned that I embraced Islam 2.5 years ago. So at the time that I was a local news reporter, I was not Muslim, but there were a lot of struggles that I faced early on in my career. And I do want to mention that, sometimes we feel like we struggle to find purpose in our profession, but it may not be the profession that needs changing. It could just be that the avenue that you're pursuing, that passion, just needs to be a little different or adjusted. So in the news industry, it's a very cutthroat business. And a lot of people can kind of see it as something very glamorous, like, oh wow, you're on TV, people know you. But being a public figure can be very, very difficult. Oh, we're not quite on this slide yet. So it can be very difficult because, when people get to know you, they have a certain expectation or standard that they have of you. And you really do need to maintain, a certain level of decor and professionalism whenever you are a public figure on TV. And especially if you are delivering the news, you have to develop that trust with your audience that you are a person that they can rely on to get their local news from. But underneath all of that, the business is actually very cutthroat because there isn't really a lot of mentorship, in my opinion, or from what I experienced. So there won't be a lot of people that would take you under their wing. And so that can be a struggle early on. The hours are very grueling. I would say personally that I experienced a lot of verbal abuse and harassment. And it's a very low-paying job as well. There's a heavy drinking culture in journalism altogether. And then also, after embracing Islam, I think I realized that there was also a lot of objectification of women, because our beauty is used to, in my opinion, boost ratings, and it can feel that way, But at the time, being a non-Muslim, I didn't really realize it or see it that way. But it wasn't until after I became Muslim and I embraced hijab and everything that I saw there's a true wisdom behind modesty and the guidelines that are set for us. There's not really time for a work-life balance or even it's not a very conducive environment either for raising a family or being married, because of the hours, the work hours, and the type of work. And then I would also mention that I experienced a lot of secondary trauma as a news reporter as well, because you witness a lot of just death and destruction. And I would say there was a total of maybe 20 parents I told the stories of their children who had passed away. So they either died from freak accidents or murder or disease or just unknown causes. And being young, at that time I was about 22, so I really didn't know how to handle those situations because I had never even been through death myself at that point, not even in my own family. So it was a lot to take on, as well as the trauma from the first responders that we would tell the stories of, or so on and so forth. So it definitely took some time to heal after that, but there were a lot of contributing factors as to why I left news reporting. But it was tough because I had been wanting to be a news reporter since I was 9 years old. So when I reached that goal, that life goal already at 23, I would think like, what do I do with my life now? I already became the thing that I wanted to be, and I sort of had an identity crisis. But I think there's such a wisdom, in that when you become Muslim, like, you shouldn't really tie your identity to what you do as a profession. First and foremost, you are a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And back then I didn't have that. So I definitely saw that later on, but it took a while to realize. So after I left news reporting, I moved back near my parents and I took a year off, and I realized just because I'm not a news reporter anymore doesn't mean that I'm not a storyteller. And I know that I can take my passions and use it for good someplace else. So that's what I went ahead and did, and I worked in the nonprofit and public education sectors, like I mentioned. But some of the reflections I just wanted to share was that, how we should reflect on, how unhealthy and contradictory to the fitra it can be to connect your life's purpose to your profession. So having a healthy separation of those things, I think, is important, because at any time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can make it so that we aren't able to pursue that profession anymore. So having that healthy detachment, I think, is important. And as a woman, I think it can be especially dangerous for us to have that mindset of attaching our profession to our self-worth and our identity, because it really holds us back from thriving, I think. And it doesn't mean that as women, we shouldn't have passions. We definitely should, and we should have ambitions, and we should want to excel in our fields of study, because there's many examples of Muslim women who have pioneered and achieved in fields of literature and art and poetry and medicine and so much more throughout history. But just to, remind ourselves to not lose sight that our main purpose in life is to be a servant of Allah. And these talents that Allah blessed us with shouldn't distract us either from our obligations to Him and the quality of our worship. So I definitely make a lot of dua, and I ask Allah to make the passions I have and the talents I have as a means of gaining His pleasure. How are we on time? Okay. So I did want to share a little bit about my documentary. Now that I have left news and I've moved on even from my work in public education and the nonprofit world, I found a real passion for doing volunteer videography for Muslim organizations. And I've also took on the project of making my first documentary film. So this is in progress, and it's a solo project, but I really wanted to create a film that focused on the significance of Salah in Islam, and to show and have this film be a means of information for non-Muslims as well. So it's a big thing for me because I want to be able to show this film to my own family and for them to understand it and to see, how beautiful Islam is in this part of our life with Salah. Because in my opinion, I think Salah is one of the most humanizing things in Islam, because you are dedicating your time to remember Allah throughout the day. And even speaking about things in this film as far as like prostration and being in that vulnerable state and all of those things, I want to be able to share with all audiences. So it was also important to me that the subjects in the film which I chose, they share their narratives and their personal connection with Salah. So I wanted them to be of different backgrounds, and I have a born Muslim, and then I have a couple of converts who come from different backgrounds. And it was important to me that this film was set in Dallas, which is where I'm from, and that I took advantage of the local scholarship there as well. So I had a lot of help from the shuyukh around the area who could oversee my work and make sure that I was staying in line with what I needed to. Do we want to take a break before I show the clip?
The clip is like 5 minutes or a little less.
It's like 3 minutes.
Maybe go for prayer and then watch when we come back.
Okay, all right. Well, so
I mean, we have like 7, 8 minutes before prayer, but maybe want to give people 5 minutes for wudu.
okay, all right. We'll break for wudu, and then we'll pray, inshallah, maghrib, and then we'll come back onto the live and finish out the rest. Sound good? Okay. All right.
So we can break for wudu and prayer and then come back inshallah tomorrow for the rest of the talk and Q&A.
Sounds good. Do you want to pause the live? Okay, we'll be back. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, you can put them up. Can you unclip me? to connect back to the microphone.
No worries.
Have like 3 microphones to connect to.
Have we turned one of them on or?
That one, because I'm, oh no, is it already on? And then, are you connected to the Bluetooth? Don't start the live yet, though. While I'm awkwardly trying to. Good. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alright. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Feels good after coming back from prayer and having a little bit of a break. But inshallah, we'll just pick up where we left off. So, I was wanting to share a clip from my documentary, um, and that's on the desktop. Just briefly before we play, I wanted to introduce the clip. So, this is one of my documentary subjects, Sydney. She is also a convert to Islam. She embraced Islam a couple of years ago. She's from Texas as well. You'll recognize that she works with livestock. She's a ranch hand. She's a hijabi. And each person in my documentary has a very personal connection with Salah. And so I won't give away what she said about hers, but this is just a brief clip from my documentary of introducing her and what she's about. Bismillah.
You're in jeans, boots, a button up, and a headscarf? What are you? So that always kind of goes interesting, like, because they just look at me like, I don't know what to make of you.
Welcome to my world. That's what I do. Work with cows, horses. Come on.
I think working within agriculture, being Muslim helps with that connectedness in the sense that not only do I have a reason to do it of, oh, it's the food chain, but also this is a creation of God. And as humans, we have both the right and the obligation to look after this creation. I'm going to do it in the best way that I know how, and for me, that's working with livestock.
I got this up in Utah this summer when I was working.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
That's good looking out, man.
Came with the sheep.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm a woman in a male-dominated, physically demanding environment. My hijab is not my problem. It's just being able to do the work. Because if you can't do the work, you shouldn't be here. But if you can do the work, no one usually cares. good job or not? I mean, I enjoy this environment.
Yeah, I work in agriculture, but even in things like dress, modesty, that kind of stuff, where I look at it and say, hey, look, I have the rights I need and the rights that I want through my religion. I'm not being crushed under the religion. Like, there's always a reason for everything, and I think, with that does come guidelines, but also empowerment, because everybody has a choice. I mean, there's a verse in the Quran that says, let there be no compulsion in religion, because the truth and the falsehood have been made readily apparent. And so when one looks for that, I think one's going to find that if you truly look for it as well. And it becomes empowering because then, like, you know where you stand and you understand why you do what you do and things like that.
So that was just a brief clip from my documentary, and I hope to be completing it soon with the editing. I finished the filming, alhamdulillah, recently, so it's still a project that I need to continue working on. But moving back to my art and how I've been able to intersect my culture and also my faith within my art. Before Islam, I think it's the next slide. Yeah, here's an example of two of my prints. Before Islam, I would say my art was very different. I don't think that I really had a vision, and I think a lot of my work, and I can be very critical of it now, really lacked depth. To me, I just felt like it didn't have a lot of meaning because most of what I did was actually portraits. And when I became Muslim, since I embraced Islam 2.5 years ago, I took a break from creating art. I really wanted to take the time to learn the fundamentals of my deen and adjust to a new way of life. And I knew that that was going to have a significant impact on my art. So I took the time to consult with imams in my area and other people of knowledge and really tried to find a way to express myself through my art that would be pleasing to Allah. And that's kind of how I ended up finding my niche. I realized that there could be a lot of value in creating art that ties in my identity as a Mexican American convert to Islam, and then having things present in my work, such as things like the Kaaba. Like in this particular print on the left, the papel picado is very significant in our culture as Mexicans, and usually around Day of the Dead, like around this time, you'll see these papel picados decorating a lot of places. It could be anywhere, even like at a wedding. I had papel picado even at my own wedding. So it's a really significant kind of decor, celebratory decor in my culture. And I always wanted to create a print with, mashallah, I always wanted to create a print with papel picado, but I didn't know exactly like what to put in the middle of it, so I decided to place the Kaaba in the middle. And to me, this is like the perfect blend of both. And it's a real talking piece, especially when I take it out to pop-ups and I share this print. These prints are available on my website for purchase, but I usually take them out to pop-ups, and then people will have a chance to observe them up close and see the different colors I printed with. And then the second print to the right is one that I created recently, which I shared earlier, the process of how it was made. And this one, I don't feel like it's exactly obvious, how it ties into Islam. But for a lot of Mexican Americans, they'll realize at the middle there's a piñata, And there's a certain song that your family will sing when it's your turn to go ahead and hit the piñata. And so I have the lyrics of the song on the front and the bottom. And so, inshallah, I'm creating a video for my vlog, my YouTube channel, where I talk about more in depth the explanation of it. So we can move on to the next slide, I think. Yeah, but more than anything, I just want to reiterate that specifically in my art, I feel like, I try to express that Islam beautifies culture. And I think that's really important, for converts, especially to remember that you don't have to give up your culture or your heritage just because you became Muslim. Because Islam has a way of beautifying those things in our traditions. So art is just the way of how I do that, how I reconnect with my cultural identity. Okay, we'll talk about this in a minute, but I just wanted to go back to videography for a minute. So at the time that I embraced Islam, I was working at a public school district, and I wouldn't say there was a ton of situations I found myself in that were conflicting with Islam, as far as the content that I filmed, because a lot of it was just kind of uplifting teachers and students, and it was more so just the typical balance, as a young professional that you have to face with, like, putting aside time for prayer, making sure you set your boundaries at work. Okay, are they going to give you that time that you need to pray? And then I, of course, had to set certain boundaries for myself, because like I did with Sydney in my documentary, I'm very conscious of the way of how I can preserve her modesty with the way that I film her if I'm going to show her on camera. And I think it's important that specifically with that in my documentary, that her presence is known. She is shown, and there's a lot of dawah in that, being able to see maybe other young women like herself who are, didn't grow up being Muslim, who are from Texas, can look at that and see her and be like, oh, Islam is for everybody. I can do that too. And that's my intention for my YouTube channel, La Chicana Muslima. But it comes with a lot of responsibility. But going back to videography and work, even for non-Muslim women, when I would film them, I would be very conscious of preserving their modesty as well. So that was really important to me, and that was just a personal standard. I didn't talk about it with anybody, but in my mind, when I was there at work and I was filming a teacher or a student or somebody, I would always keep that in mind. And even thinking about like the logistics of miking up, if I was putting a mic on, someone. Before, I used to just put the mic on anybody, but then after I became Muslim, I realized, okay, I need to have certain boundaries. So I would have my male coworkers mic up the men, whoever I was interviewing, and then I would mic up the women. So just small things like that I had to think about throughout the day at work, but it wasn't really anything big. And then as far as my freelance work went as a videographer, I had to think about, is the business that I'm creating social media content for a halal business? There was one particular example that I can just share quickly, which I was filming a series of reels for a pet store. And when I was filming, I didn't realize in my shot that there was a dog toy, and it was actually like a beer bottle. And I didn't see it until I was in post and I was editing, and I'm like, but I really need this shot in there. I can't really compromise the flow of the reel by taking this shot out. And so if you're an editor, then you know what I'm talking about. So what I did was I ended up blurring it out, and I was able to kind of just make it look slightly out of focus, and you could not tell that it was a beer bottle at all, and it wasn't anything distracting in the shot. But to me as a Muslim, I didn't feel comfortable having my name attached to that kind of work. So I just had to be conscious of that if I was filming something for a non-Muslim business, that I would think about those things. So post-Islam, I took on a lot of volunteer work, and paid work for Islamic organizations. And it was a really beautiful time to get to know the community that I was in, especially as a new Muslim. To share my talents with Islamic organizations and then build that community as a convert early on. So I wanted to talk about my YouTube channel as well, just briefly. So my vlog on YouTube is centered around deen, lifestyle, and art. And what really inspired me to create my channel was just watching other Muslims share their story about how they embraced Islam. So I watched a lot of convert stories because back when I was contemplating embracing Islam, I didn't know that you could be Mexican and you could be Muslim. I didn't know that Islam is for everybody. So when I didn't really see a lot of Latinos sharing their stories, I still was kind of, on the fence about it. But then I realized, obviously through my research, that anybody could be Muslim. And then I felt sort of like a call to create a channel with the skill set that I was given. But I definitely would say it took a lot of contemplation. I prayed a lot of istikhara. I made a lot of dua in general, just hoping that it was the right thing to do. Because I really do think that if somebody starts something like this, like a YouTube channel, and you're a Muslim, you really need to kind of reflect on your intentions and renew your intentions constantly, because it's really easy to kind of get lost in the sauce, like they say, and get caught up in having an online presence and people paying attention to you and looking your way. So it's really important for you to just think about your intentions and what kind of message you're pushing, because if you look at the Muslim influencer world, objectively, there is a lot of just consumerism being pushed. I've noticed a lot of that. Buy from my Amazon cart. This is what I purchased. You should purchase this too. And I feel like young women, especially hijabis, are targeted. Like, you need this product in order to be like a good hijabi, and you need to buy this particular scarf, and this is what's trending right now. And as Muslims, I don't feel that we should be caught up in that kind of thing. So me personally, I try to really refine my feed and just seek inspiration from other Muslim influencers who pursue the things that I care about, like sustainability, minimalism, and things like that. So for me personally, it's important that I share my experience as a Mexican American Muslim, but I do have to think about things like, am I oversharing? Am I sharing too much about my personal life? Am I representing myself in a modest way? And then being married, I would say, it adds another layer, because I'm no longer just representing myself for myself. I have to be mindful of my husband and, what is his comfort level around what I share and what I post, because, it's public. So those are just a few things that I would say if anybody's interested in starting a YouTube channel, to just kind of keep these things in the back of your mind. I had a question that, people usually see Islam as restrictive, and I was asked if I see it that way in my creative work. And I would say I definitely don't see it as restrictive at all. I do have to think more about modesty, like I mentioned, but to me, I don't feel like that adds any restriction. If anything, it's protection. When I have to think about when I'm interviewing non-mahrams, for example, like for my documentary, do I have someone else present while I'm filming? Or if I'm filming by myself, am I filming in public? Those kinds of things. And then videography is it's very physical work. It's very physically demanding. So, I want to make sure that when I'm out filming, that I'm wearing loose, comfortable clothing, and so that I'm being modest while I'm doing my work, and then as well as preserving the modesty of whoever I'm capturing on camera. So just like I mentioned earlier, I went through, I don't see Islam as restrictive. I see it as protective. So that's also another reason why I went through just a lot of back and forth. You know, if I film myself, what are my intentions? You know, if I start this YouTube channel, what are my intentions? And ultimately, I came to the conclusion that I want to be an advocate for my minority community within the Muslim population, and I hope that my online presence can show Islam is for everybody and it's for Latinos as well. So, yeah, I was also asked to share if I had any advice. So I would say that if you see Islam as restrictive, to really take a step back and reflect and reframe how you see Islam and your work. Because really abiding by the guidelines that were set for us, it's only going to bring barakah in your work. And I've seen that firsthand. You know, when I wanted to start this documentary, I didn't expect to receive all the help that I did. I received so much help from the community, from Muslim, non-Muslim. There was just so many people who were willing to just do a small part, whether it was carrying my equipment for me or to huge things like lending me a professional studio with lighting and things that I didn't have or wouldn't have if it wasn't for their help. So I would say, you know, as long as you try to go by what is pleasing to Allah, you will only see it come back to you in tenfold, the barakah. Let's see. What kinds of friends or inner circles do you need? So I would say that if you surround yourself with people who support you, Muslim or non-Muslim, that's the best thing that you can do, because it's going to inspire you to do what's pleasing to Allah. If you're around other people who that's important to them as well. And then knowledge is key, and just really knowing, you know, what the purpose is and the wisdom behind guidelines, you know, that you're following, because the knowledge will bring you ease, inshallah. How can we be conscious of Allah in our work? Every time that I take on a new project, I will pray istikhara. And even with my documentary, I've been working on it for about 2 years, and I constantly make istikhara about it. So I'll literally say things in my dua like, oh Allah, if this project is good for me in terms of my deen, my dunya, my akhirah, then facilitate it for me with ease and bless me through it. And at the same time, I think it's important to maintain your sincerity in the next part of that prayer, which is asking Allah to take it away from you if it has bad consequences on your deen, dunya, and akhirah. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to become attached to a project that is going to take you away from Allah. You don't want to become attached to anything that would take you away from Him. So it's really important that you seek refuge in Him, and that you ask Allah to protect you from your own ego when pursuing, you know, creative endeavors like this. You know, that other people are going to be watching, you know, making sure like that you're not doing these things to please other people, that you're trying to create work that would be pleasing to Allah. So I'm constantly asking Allah to purify my intentions and to purify my heart. And then in the next slide, I just wanted to share a couple of inspirations that I have. So these two, I feel like, are very good representatives of how videography can be such an essential tool for learning about Islam and like sharing about Islam. And Yaqeen Institute, I've seen them grow over the last like 3 years, you know, in their videography and really investing in storytellers. And they create such beautiful work, mashallah. So everybody I know looks forward to like the Ramadan series every year. And this last one that they did was the Why Me series, and they kind of made it like a mini, it was just like a mini fictional series where you followed along to the story of a Muslim that I feel like a lot of people would connect with. So it was a beautiful series, and I found a lot of inspiration in it. Towards Eternity is another channel. It's like a Dawa channel. So they have a lot of convert stories on there, but they also just share general knowledge, about like what is the story of Adam alayhi salam in Islam versus, what does it say in Christianity in the Bible. So they'll have videos like that. And then I didn't share an example on here, but I just wanted to mention briefly that there's other artists that I have found inspiration in. Peter Sanders is one that my husband actually introduced me to his work. And he's a Muslim photographer, and he's a convert as well. So he actually began his career in London, photographing really famous musicians like Bob Dylan and the Rolling Stones. And then when he embraced Islam, his work completely changed, and then he began capturing the Muslim world. And I remember when we had visited the local bookstore, Islamic bookstore, Rami bookstore in Fremont. We found one of his books that has all of his work, and he had photographed all of these well-known scholars around the world, and it was just so beautiful, and it brought me to tears when I looked at it, because I was just thinking, like, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to use my passions and my talents to show people the beauty of Islam. And in the last slide, I just wanted to share my QR codes. So if you want to keep in touch and follow my Instagram at Salam Stamps, and my website as well. I also have my YouTube channel, and then my videography portfolio as well. So I just wanted to make sure I shared that with you guys. And I just wanted to finish off with a dua, because if you've tuned into this, I really hope that it's helped you in some sort of way, at least to remind us to be conscious of Allah in the work that we do as creative professionals. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. O Allah, we ask you to send peace and blessings upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the prophets and messengers who came before him, his family and companions who served alongside him, and all of those who follow in his blessed path until the day of judgment. We ask you to make us amongst them. Ya Rabbi, we ask you to purify our hearts, guide us on the straight path, and elevate our iman. Ya Kareem, we ask you to place barakah in our projects and our creative endeavors. O Allah, use us and the talents and passions you blessed us with to show the beauty of Islam to others. Make our work a means of bringing us and those around us close to you. Make our work a means of obtaining your pleasure. O Allah, grant us tawfiq, ultimate success in this life and in the next. Allahumma innaka afuwun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Allahumma ameen. Alhamdulillah.
You can open it up for Q&A.
Yeah.
How long would you say, do you want to do like 10 minutes Q&A?
Yeah, however long. I'm just gonna, I think my mic fell. Okay. Well, this will work for me, but that can work for anyone else.
Well, so if you have a question, you can put it on so that the live stream can hear it. Or if you're going to repeat it, right? I think the question.
I can repeat it. Some people get shy.
Yeah. Well, I have a question.
Okay.
I really liked how Michelle kept talking about how you were trying to be like Allah conscious in your work, especially after reverting and making sure like am I being mindful about like modesty and making sure I represent things that pleases Allah. I know you mentioned that when you were Allah conscious, more doors opened for you, but were there any moments where you were kind of worried about like, oh, if I limit myself, I might have less opportunities? Because I can imagine a lot of Muslims thinking, oh, if I don't socialize in happy hour with my work, even if I'm not drinking, like that may limit like network networking opportunities? Like, were there any of those moments where you had those thoughts, and like, if you did, like, what did you tell yourself to say, like, no, I'm gonna still do Allah?
Yeah, okay. So the question is if I found any roadblocks along the way for turning down certain opportunities that were probably not going to be pleasing to Allah, such as happy hour and things of that nature. Um, the honest answer is no. Anytime that even if it seemed extreme or it seemed out of the ordinary to my coworkers, that I wouldn't participate in something like that. Um, it was strange because I wouldn't see my opportunities limited personally. I would see more doors open up for me, and I would see that I gained a certain level of respect from my coworkers. That they would see, wow, they saw my life before. Oh, she's really changed in this way. But somehow, even as non-Muslims, it's like they see that change in you and they see something positive. And they may not exactly attribute it to Islam, and they may not know exactly the ins and outs, but they know that there's something good about it. And they see that in you, that positive change. And so when you turn things down, I don't think that I've ever came across anyone that necessarily saw it as something negative or she's being too extreme or anything like that. I think they found more respect in it. And then also it provokes some curiosity as well, because it would open up conversations. And alhamdulillah, with my particular coworkers, they felt comfortable enough to ask me about my journey. They saw the before and the after, like I said. So, if they wanted to go out for drinks or they wanted to do something, they would be like, well, why is it that you can't drink if you're Muslim? And so that would open up a conversation, excuse me. But then again, you have to make sure, and it's hard when you're a convert, because the day that you become Muslim and then the day you tell somebody that you are Muslim, you're expected to be a scholar, like day one. You have to be on your P's and Q's and answer every question that they have, and you're so new, and then it's hard for you because you don't want to say anything wrong. And so it is kind of important to make sure that you're not only continuing to seek knowledge, because that's what you're supposed to do as a Muslim anyway. A born Muslim convert, you're supposed to seek knowledge constantly. But in the beginning, it's really important to do that, not only because this is what's pleasing to Allah, but also because other people are going to ask you questions. They're going to ask you about your journey. And it's so important. Best piece of advice anyone ever gave me: you don't know the answer, it's okay to say I don't know. Don't just make anything up on the spot. So but yeah, in short, it really never closed any doors for me. I think it always opened up doors, and it really fostered positive connections with my coworkers. Yeah. I think everyone's shy. Was there any questions on the live stream? Because there might be on there.
No, I don't see any questions on the live stream.
Okay. Oh, we have a question.
So, you say you are also a content creator, right?
Yes.
Only for YouTube, or you also, for your Instagram, you are also a content creator? Because my question is, it's interesting because just yesterday I was talking with someone, because I'm also a revert, and I wanted to start sharing a little bit of, not the, not exactly the journey, but the religion somehow. But when I go on internet, I see many negative comments in many posts.
Okay.
Many comments from Muslim people.
Yeah.
So what I did some time ago, I privated my social media, and I was thinking, and deleted many people. So I was thinking about share with the people I know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like I want to share with more people.
Yeah.
So I'm from Brazil, And in Brazil, I didn't know any Muslim person until I came here.
Yeah.
And most of the content I consume about Islam is in English. And many people in Brazil doesn't speak
Right.
English. So I wanted to make the message get there.
Yeah.
But I was afraid of going to social media, and I don't know how I could deal with the hate from non-Muslim and Muslim people.
Yeah.
How do you?
How do I balance that? Okay, well, there's a lot of pieces of her questions. So I want to make sure that I summarize everything for the live audience. So, mashallah, we have a Brazilian convert here, and she wanted to share more of her story and how she embraced Islam to show that Islam is for everybody, including Brazilians and Latinos, and it's a beautiful intention to have. And you also asked me, do I share content on Instagram and YouTube? I only for my stamps is Instagram, but YouTube, this is the kind of content that I share, that you're talking about. And I was also asked, how do you go about doing it and balancing the negative comments, especially from other Muslims? First of all, I want to say that you're not the first Brazilian who wants to share Islam with other Brazilians. You have to find your tribe and your community. And I realized that whenever I wanted to start my channel, I thought, well, I can't be the first Mexican American who ever wants to create a YouTube channel and share Islam with other people like me. And, alhamdulillah, I was introduced to an organization called Islam in Spanish. And this organization is home to the first Spanish-speaking masjid in the country, which is in Houston, Texas. And they also have a local chapter in Dallas that was close to me. So I went over there and I learned about their organization, and I volunteered for them, and I did volunteer videography for them. And I really helped in that way, because ultimately what your intention is to share Islam with the people in your home country. And for me, this was an avenue of how I could do it. It may not be me who's right in front of the camera, but in the beginning, at least while I'm learning, and I'm learning more about the fundamentals of my deen, I can do this to help propel that cause so that other people like me can have access. Because they also offer so much Islamic material in Spanish. And that's the thing, is that's a roadblock that you mentioned, is that there's a language barrier, because when you want to learn about Islam, it's mostly in English, like in this country. And I'm sure it is probably really difficult to find content in Portuguese. So I do think that there's so much value in you being able to spread the message of Islam and the beauty of it in your own native tongue in Portuguese, and for people to see you, oh, mashallah, this is a Brazilian convert, and she's speaking Portuguese, and she's telling me in my language this beautiful message. But there's just certain steps that you have to take there, and I guess I always kind of go back in a loop to gaining knowledge, and really learning the fundamentals of your deen first, because it's going to protect you from so much, including those negative comments. Because it's one thing to be, okay, I have tough skin, I can handle it. But when you're so new to Islam, like those kinds of comments, they do have an impact on you. There's a lot of people who embrace Islam and share their story like you're wanting to, and they haven't started wearing hijab yet. And you'll see like 100 comments on there. You need to cover yourself, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. But these people may not necessarily be privy to the experience that we have as converts. They may not understand. There's nobody in my family who has ever worn hijab. Like, I didn't even know what this was until I became Muslim. I didn't know the meaning of it. And for you to make that huge change in your life, that's a very personal struggle. And you don't want to have people along for that, especially people that are not going to uplift you. So, in my opinion, I think it's just really important as a new Muslim to focus on gaining knowledge, building your community, sisterhood around you, so that when you do want to start that channel, you have people around you to support you, and you have the knowledge, and you're equipped. So I hope that answers your question, inshallah.
I don't see any other questions in the live.
Oh, we have another question.
How has being Muslim helped you as a business owner?
Okay, the question was how has being Muslim helped me as a business owner? Well, in what ways? Like,
Like how you navigate your business, or like how you go about deciding things that you're gonna do.
yeah, how do I go about deciding projects and
Yeah.
navigating? Yeah. So, I mean, definitely, it's easier because it's like I have a guideline for ethics. I mean, Islam is so beautiful in that way where it just gives you the recipe for everything that you need. So, alhamdulillah, when it comes to, dealing with customer service, for example, because yes, I'm an artist, but I do create custom stamps for local businesses. So I want to make sure that my customers are happy and they're satisfied with what they received, because that's something that they really invested in. It's a little piece of art and it represents the logo of their business, and it's something super special to them. And I've seen firsthand when I would hand deliver the stamp to them and they would see it for the first time and hold it, how much it means to them. And then they'll share on their Instagram, like, hey, I used my slam stamps today, and they stamped like a paper bag or something. And so I just want to make sure that when I'm dealing with them, that they feel good and they feel special. And, again, going back to the seeking knowledge thing, learning more about Sirah, there's just so much that you can draw inspiration from our beloved Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how he treated people. It made them feel like the most special person in the world, no matter who it was. And when you apply those principles into your life, especially when it comes to customer service, you'll just see so many doors open up. And again, not every person is going to notice, oh, it's because she's Muslim that she's like that. But you hope that maybe they've come across enough Muslims and you're not the first one to make them feel that way. So in that way, I feel like, being Muslim has really helped my business, just dealing with customer service. And then of course, just being conscious of the projects I take on. Like, if I'm going to carve a stamp for a business, is it halal? I can't create a stamp for like a bar or something. I have to think about that. Like, is this a good brand for me to attach myself to? Because I would never want somebody to think that, oh, well, she's doing it, so it's okay. Because especially being a convert, and being having an online presence, you have to be aware of that you are a representative of Islam, and you want to make sure that you're a good example for others. It's not exactly the best position to put yourself in when you're so early into it, but sometimes it just happens if you pursue it. But yeah, is there any other questions?
From online, but I do have another one. How do you, because it sounds like it takes, you were saying earlier, the stamp making process takes a long time, like a couple of hours, just put on the stamp, and then you also have your videography where you're making documentaries, inshallah. How do you have, because I know you're married, inshallah, you have your own family, but how do you have that work-life balance? Like, what do you do to make sure to have those excellent customer service and be fully present, but also like manage your time equally with like all other parts of your life?
Oh yeah. Okay, so the question is about the work-life balance with having the passions and the hobbies and work and being married and then starting a family soon, inshallah. So, well, I'm new to the Bay Area, so my stamp business thrived in Texas, and I took a break from it when I moved out here. So I guess I create that balance because I want to make sure that I prioritize a new chapter in my life. So for me, that was getting married and moving. And so I just had to make the decision, okay, I'm going to discontinue my stamp business for a little while. First, the first priority for that was that I wanted to really work on my skill set as a new documentary filmmaker, because that was a new avenue for videography that I never had gone into. So I had discontinued my stamp business to focus on the filmmaking. And then when I got married, I put a pause on the filmmaking. And then when I was talking to my husband for marriage, he was very supportive, alhamdulillah, of my creative endeavors. So I just put my trust in Allah that, when the time came for me that I had to prioritize these new life events, such as getting married and starting a family, that if I put pause on it, that it would have that trust in Allah that it's going to continue after. If Allah can make it happen before those life events, He can make it happen after. So it's slow, the stamp business, as I've revamped it in the Bay Area, it's starting off slow with the custom stamps. But alhamdulillah, when it comes to drawing inspiration for new prints and new stamp ideas and things like that, new designs, that all came after I got married and I had put a pause on all that creation of just putting out product after product after product. I don't know how to explain it because before I never created art from my own mind. I always kind of just carved logos and then made the stamp, carved logos, made the stamp, like that was it. And then when I moved here and I took that break and I really focused on just building my marriage and my family, I felt so much more inspiration and all these ideas started coming up. So yeah, I mean, sometimes I don't feel like it's a bunch of things happening at once that I'm juggling. I think I just take the initiative to say, okay, I'm pushing pause on this for a second. I can always pick it up later. And then I do, and alhamdulillah, it works out. Yeah. That may be too extreme for some people, but, Any other questions? Have a question? Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
So the question's on dawah and like within some parts of America, feels like within here, within California, there's a lot of cynicism towards organized religion in general.
Yeah.
And then that extends to Islam. So how do you approach that with balance in a way that it doesn't feel evangelical, but overly strong-handed to some people because they'll pull back quickly on that.
Yeah.
Part two of that question is how, like as a videographer, what sort of opportunity is there in especially long form video content to work up to those ideas, especially the newer complex ones?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have pregnancy brain, so I may need you to touch back on the second question. But the first question was about the cynicism, I hope I'm saying that word right, around organized religion and how that kind of projects onto Islam. So a lot of people will have a negative impression of Islam because they had a bad experience with organized religion. And I mean, I don't have the answers for everything, but from a convert perspective, it is difficult to navigate because I have so many close people in my life that the barrier between them and Islam is the thought of, I just don't agree with organized religion, and I see this as something that's super negative. And it's heartbreaking for you as a Muslim because, Allah, as the way that it's described in the Quran, is like this veil. And I remember this veil very clearly before I embraced Islam. I could not see Islam for what it was at that time. It was like some kind of bubble I was in. And then when I sincerely asked for guidance, it was like that veil completely lifted. And I remember just seeing the truth for what it was. And there was no denying it. It was like I knew that Islam was the truth more than I knew that my parents are my parents, or my name is my name, or that the sky is blue during the day and the grass is green. Well, it should be green, not in Texas because it's super dry. But it's just one of those things that you have to kind of come to terms with that, other people, they have their experiences with organized religion, and it does kind of ruin it for us to share Islam with them. But Allah truly guides whom He wills. And He will lift that veil and make it easy for them to see, just like you did or like anyone else did that converted who maybe had a negative experience with organized religion and they saw, they didn't feel good about that, and so they thought maybe Islam would be the same way. But Allah lifted that veil, for us who embrace Islam, and we were able to see the truth distinct from falsehood. So inshallah, Allah will do that for anyone else who maybe feels that way, towards it. But it's not in our control. It's not in our. We can do our best as Muslims to show, because it's such a hard thing to explain to people that Islam is a way of life. It's like a full picture. It's not just something that you pick up on a Sunday for a couple hours a day. It's something that you apply to every single thing in your life. How do you treat people, and how do you go about your day, and what kind of work do you explain that to somebody, who just has like an idea of an organized religion. But honestly, I always feel like the best dawah is just having good character and showing by your example, what Islam is about. And that really seems to like draw people in, I've noticed, because that's how I was given dawah. So second part of the question was about my documentary, but I can't remember.
The opportunity, or how you think about the intersection between like working up to those that sort of dawah, or like showing like glimpses of the sweetness of Islam, or like its approach to ethics, or problems that we face in our lives. The opportunity to showcase that in film and videography, especially longer form.
Oh, so how did I build up to being?
How could you build? How do you think of that intersection of videography as a vehicle for dawah,
Yeah.
especially with the like both time and self-containment that has to build up to, say, a complex topic, or like showcase some of the ethical things that Islam has, or like the answers to a complex problem.
Hopefully I can reframe your question right for the audience, but building up long form content and really showing Islam for what it is, and everything in its ethics, and it's just, honestly, it goes back to knowledge. Like I had to really build up some kind of repertoire for like how to navigate it, because if I didn't know even the fundamentals of my deen, like I have to pray 5 times a day. How am I going to have a documentary about praying 5 times a day? So I had to really take the time initially when I first embraced Islam to read, and to listen to a lot of talks. And not only that, but it was hard because I was kind of like I don't want to say like I had imposter syndrome, because I thought, well, who am I? I'm a Muslim of 2.5 years. What right do I have to create a lot, this long form content, like a documentary, and take that on and say, like, look, this is what Islam is about. And I realized that I was just too much in my head about it. And when you go ahead and you actually study Sirah, and you see that there are many companions who may have just embraced Islam like that day, and then their ideas are being, really valued by, who only but our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It gave me confidence to be like, okay, I can use my talents in the best way, but I have to be smart about it. So I have to make sure that I'm continuously studying, and I'm learning from reputable sources, and then I'm having knowledgeable people who I trust who can oversee my work. So it's really important to me that I consult with an imam or a sheikh who can look at my work and give their opinion and say, okay, this is a good way to go, but maybe you should try this, or you should try that. And then I apply my knowledge as a videographer, or filmmaker, or storyteller to what they have to advise me on. And that's the best way I can see, navigating it, because it is hard, but so far it's really worked for me. But I hope that answers somewhat of your question. Oh, we have a question.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that first part.
Mhm.
In addition to how to navigate people that previously had bad experience with organs removed in general.
Yeah.
In addition to that, you have the negative things that come out of Islamic countries like in the Middle East, for example.
Yeah.
A lot of negative news that comes out there. How do you break those barriers to the people? I understand that unless Allah removes the veil, they cannot see. But from our human perspective,
Yeah.
is there anything
Yeah.
what can we do now with the people?
Okay, the question is how do we ease concerns about or negative outlooks about Islam?
Yeah,
And
like table discussion.
yeah, yeah. Well, it is hard, and I will say that I come across it a lot being a convert. So with my own family, like we start there. I think it's important to start when your own family members have these concerns because really what they want is what's best for you. Like when I mean, I'm not a parent yet, but inshallah I will be in a couple months. And I think about my parents, you know, they just want to see me safe and they want to see me happy, just like any parent. And it is hard to ease their concerns because, like I said, the day that you tell them that you're Muslim, you're expected to know everything. You're expected to be a scholar. And you know they want you to not only be a scholar of Islam, but they want you to be like the news correspondent who can answer all the questions of the struggles in the Middle East. You know, I'm a former journalist, but you know, I didn't work in that field. You know, I didn't study that much, so it's hard for me to have a concrete opinion on foreign affairs, and also be, you know, a scholar at the same time, and just being a Muslim for 2.5 years. So, but it's kind of like what I mentioned earlier. You know, it's more of like you have to think of it like the long term, because it's so sad when right away you're kind of met with this uphill battle, and you feel like their mind will never change. But I realize that it's a long-term thing. You know, when somebody close to me has a negative experience, previous negative experience, like with organized religion, and they kind of project that negativity onto Islam, but they will see, inshallah, over time with how I treat them and how I am with them, that maybe, you know what, this whole Muslim thing is not as bad as I thought it was. You know, and I can tell you from personal examples with my own family. My husband and I, we get asked about this all the time. Alhamdulillah, he watches a lot of news, so he's able to really take the time, and he has so much patience with talking to my parents, especially my dad, who could just go on for hours. I've seen them sit there at the table for like an hour or more discussing foreign affairs and like the history of Islam and all this stuff. And I couldn't do that. So alhamdulillah, Allah placed, you know, my husband there who can do that. But really for like a real, for to give you an example of a real way that you can make a difference is just, it's through your character. I think it really just boils down to your character and just being a good example. And they will notice, you know, and I, like I said, with my own family, you know, my dad has asked me, I remember, I think I had been Muslim for like maybe a year and a half. And you know, I didn't communicate with him that I was discontinuing my stamp business to focus on my craft as a videographer. So he had no idea that I was out doing all this volunteer videography work and practicing and really refining my craft because I had that goal of wanting to be a documentary filmmaker, and I wanted to make a film about Islam. And so he thought, oh, is it because you're Muslim now and you wear hijab, like you just gave up your art and that's why you don't have your stamp business anymore? And I had no idea that was a concern of his. So I had to be really patient with him. Did it offend me? Of course it offended me. More than anything, it made me sad. It made me sad that he thought that my religion oppresses me, or that hijab oppresses me in any sort of way. So I had to take a breath and think and really think before I responded to him. I told him, it's okay, you can ask me any question. You're my dad, and I want you to know, why do I do the things I do? Because it looks strange. Nobody's ever been Muslim in our family, as far as I know. So I had to really be patient with him and explain to him, no, actually, I've been really focusing on my videography, and I can show you some of the projects I've been working on. And subhanAllah, now my dad, he's like an amateur videographer, but he just picked it up. He was like, you know what, I want to do what you do. So he started buying his own little, his toys, like he bought a drone, he's asking me about cameras, like he asked my advice as a videographer, and he really appreciates my work. Like I show him these little clips from my documentary, and he's like, wow, look at the lighting and how you did this. And now he has this newfound sort of zeal for the art that I love and, the work that I do. So I hope that he kind of sees, how Islam really elevated my work, that it doesn't oppress it in any sort of way. It really enhances the work that I do. Hope that answers your question. I don't know. Oh, you said there was a question online. Did we skip it? I didn't want to skip it.
No, I don't think there was a question.
Okay. All right.
I think then that can conclude our session unless there's anything else you wanted to add.
No, I think that's it. But I just want to thank you guys for having me. It was really nice being here. Going back to Yassine. Now I know what it is. Alhamdulillah. So just thank you for having me. Jazakallah khair. And for everyone for coming out and staying to ask questions. I really appreciate it.
Okay. I thought this was amazing.
Thank you.
I took away a lot of really key points, and as a teacher myself, there's definitely some things like I'm thinking about in terms of, being more Allah conscious and the work-life balance piece.
Alhamdulillah.
I know you said it was like easy, just pause things and end things, but it actually kind of made me think about what are some things I can prioritize and pause, and so that I can have more focus on things that Allah would want me to prioritize more in life. So
Alhamdulillah.
that was one takeaway I had. So jazakallah khair. And we can conclude here maybe with I know you did a dua earlier, but we can do a quick dua. I can lead it, or
You lead the dua. Yeah, I'll switch with you so people can hear you. And I'll go sit. Here you go.
I'm gonna sit just right here.
I'm gonna go sit.
Does anyone else want to end the dua? Bismillah, Allahumma salli wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad, Ya Allah. Bring barakah to this gathering and elevate Alyssa and her husband and her family. Jannat Firdaus, and grant the blessing in this life and the after. Ya Allah, grant us zeal in our in our religion, and Ya Allah, keep us on the straight path and make us those who enter Jannat Firdaus. Ya Allah, grant us strength and iman. Ya Allah, grant us barakah in our work. Ya Allah, grant us halal income. Ya Allah, grant us a good work-life balance and barakah in our time. Ya Allah, forgive those that have passed away, and bring those who are not Muslim, bring them to Islam. And Ya Allah, Ya Allah, let us strengthen our iman, and let us empower Muslims around the world, especially those in Gaza and Palestine, in China, the Uyghurs, in India. Ya Allah, help the Muslims that are oppressed all over the world. Ya Allah, bring barakah to this masjid, and let more events like this happen and more people grow in their faith and their deen. Ya Allah, Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi. Alright, jazakallah khair, guys. And then Aisha, I think, is in about, for those of you that want to say, I think it's in about 15 minutes.
15? Okay. Oh, yeah, here. Thank you for the link.
think you just, okay. And then you put, are you sure you want to until I show you?